Super Bowl, Super Bowl time. Yeah, which is opposite.
Yeah, that's like 6.
Yeah.
What's that called here, right?
They're, yeah.
Yeah.
5:30.
I need to run some healthcare with you.
Okay.
I want that next week. No one
Is
has
it right?
Huh?
Is it right?
CS.
For sure.
We'll just give you some healthcare.
Mark Cox, do you hear me?
Loud and clear.
And well, you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are just pretty good.
Okay, let's begin. Open these three workbooks, please, from class 5, the same as yesterday, Monday, and these two from class 6. Let me illustrate the offset worksheet function. It's a difficult one. It's confusing. So let me motivate it first. I'm in the book, shell controls, conditional formatting, and so forth. Sheet, select variable range. I have 8 clients, and these numbers categorize the various clients. I put a 3 in the green cell D10, and client 3's numbers appear, 95, 74, 61, 40, 42. That is those are the characteristics of client 3. Somebody call out an integer between 1 and 8. 2, did you say? I'll type a 2 in D10, and the second client's numbers appear. Compare those, please. Client 2, 73, 79, 64, and so forth. If I had typed a 7, the 7th would appear. I'm doing that using the offset worksheet function. 7 means go to the cell and come down 1 number to get to 71. Then come down 2 numbers, 3 numbers, 4 numbers, and separately 5 numbers. Let's look at the definition of the offset worksheet function. Sheet useful function. Let's put B67 near the top left of your screen. Returns a cell reference or a reference to a cell that is a specified number of rows and columns from another cell. Offsets are rows down, columns right. In the upper left corner of the worksheet. From the upper left corner, B65 means go to the right to column B and come down 65 rows. That's what B65 means. All right. Remember, an ordinary reference like 068 contains a reference to cell E76. It just says equals E76. That's what a reference is. Now let's look at the offset. I want to prominently color B74 because I will be offsetting from that cell. From this green cell, B74, I'm going to come down. If I come down 1 row, I'm talking about Nashville. If I come down 2 rows, I'm referring to Memphis. 3 rows from the green cell down 3 rows, Knoxville. Then I'm going to go over a number of columns. Let's look at 2 rows, 3 columns. From rows to columns. E83, let's trace the precedence. It says offset B74. I urge you to reword that to use a memory aid. Color the cell that you're offsetting from, B74. Put your finger on it and read this as from that green cell that I'm touching down and over. How far down? C83. How far over? D83. Down 2, over to the right 3. RC, rows and columns, like the soft drink, the beverage. RC is a Royal Crown, not very popular compared to Coke or Pepsi, but you've heard of an RC, haven't you? Okay, this definitely has a learning curve. You need to do it a few times. So does riding a bicycle, so does walking. And I'm sure you can do both of those well now that you've practiced a bunch of times. Take a minute and review carefully E83. I've got it activated. The formula bar contains the formula for E83. Offset B74. Rows and columns. You can offset negative rows. The default is to come down, but if you have a negative row, it means go up. The default column means go to the right, but if you have a negative column, it means go to the left. Take a moment. Let's look at a simpler example. These, now I want you to put A85 near the upper left of your screen. These truck drivers or other employees are required to be tested for illegal drugs every day. And I'm going to pick a random person. I'm going to use in D102, rand between 1, 13. That will return a random integer, a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5. If you want rand between 0 and 28, you say equals rand between 0, 28. The two arguments are the smallest possible and the largest possible. So randomly I generate 4. I want the offset from B86. Make sure B86 is prominently colored until you get really comfortable with this. Let's procrastinate. The final argument is 0. Don't go to the right any columns. That's easy. So we simply come down from the yellow cell. How many cells down? D102, the random integer. From names, we go to John, Sam, Lita, and pick Mike. Recalculate. Random number is 2. We pick Sam. The F9 key is supposed to recalculate. It doesn't always. If it doesn't, then press the delete key over any empty cell, and that will cause you to recalculate. 12 is Robbie. Take a minute, please, and review the offset worksheet function. Let's look at something a little bit more intuitive. Conditional formatting. I'm in the sheet, controls and conditional format, A28. This rectangular range, B31 to E33, is conditionally formatted. The largest, the maximum value has blue fill. There are 2 cells that are the largest. They both get blue fill. If I make a change, if I change B33 to 124, then this is now the largest, so it gets the shading, and the 1, 2, 3 lose the shading because they're no longer the largest. Conditional formatting is formatting such as blue fill, that appears whenever conditions you specify are met. Let's look at what that condition is. Select the cells. Select B31, E33, Home tab, Styles group, conditional formatting, Manage rules. Now, I don't really want to edit the rule, but I have to because I can't read it all. There's not enough room. If the formula is equals B31 is the max of, and it's truncated, let's edit solely so I can see. Equals B31 equals the max of absolute B31 colon absolute E33. That's the short form of the if. The formula has to return a true or a false. If the return is true, the shading blue that I picked will materialize. If the formula is not true, then it will be false. Now listen to me carefully. Conditional formatting is only important in large ranges. You can look at a tiny range and see what the big one is. In a large range, by definition, it is impractical to separately enter a formula for each and every different cell in the range containing the condition. By definition, in a large range, you don't want to enter a separate formula for each and every cell. You could theoretically, but it's impractical in all the important cases, namely the large cases. So you select the range and write one formula. That formula is in terms of the active cell, but that formula applies to every cell that has been selected and applies to none of the cells that have not been selected. The formula copies and pastes, really, it copies and applies down and to the right. This is the only example I know of where it makes a difference whether you select a range top left to lower right, as I just did, or top right to lower left, or lower right to upper left, or lower left to upper right. It doesn't really matter how you select it, but the formula you type will be different depending on how you selected it. Look at the name box. B39 is the active cell. Select the range any way you want. It's selected. If it stretches off the screen and you're not sure if you've selected it, you could turn it yellow and scroll down and then undo because you don't want it yellow. Let's reformat, conditionally format B37 to E39 so the maximum value has blue fill with red underline. All right, I'll select it. Lower right to upper left. You don't even have to remember that yet. But in a moment, we're going to need to write a formula for E39. If I had selected it differently, look at me, please, my screen. If I had selected it top left to lower right, I would need to write the formula for B37. Let's select it lower right to upper left. Home, styles, conditional formatting, no rule. In this course, we're going to use exclusively only use a formula. The formula is complex, so in the spirit of human procrastination, we will go set the format first. That's real simple. Fill, I think I asked for blue fill. I don't care what shade. Red underline, go to border, none. Color is red. Underline. The only available thickness is real thin. So I've got blue fill with red border. Does that look red to you? It's red on this monitor. Wait a minute. That looks red. There we go. That's an image. Okay. I've got the format selected. Now I need to be careful. I need a formula that's true or false. I'm going to use the short form of the if. Equals, I want to, first of all, in English, is the active cell the largest in that range? What is the active cell? E39. At this point, I glance at the name box. Type equals E39 equals the max. And I select the range. Close parentheses. Let me do an alt print screen. Once again, I selected the range. I went to Home, Tab, Styles Group, Conditional Formatting, New Rule, Use a Formula. From the reading, we will do that every time we conditionally format in this class. You give it the format you want, the fill and the border. You will notice that the fill is much more prominent than the border. The border, a real thick border, is not available. If you were looking at screen after screen after screen, if you were looking for rows 1 through 10,000 and looking for the prominent ones, conditionally formatted, you might well miss an underline, a border, because the border is so tiny. But I think it would be pretty easy to see the fill. All right, so choose your border and fill, note your active cell, and I wrote the short form of the if equals E39 equals the max of absolute, the absolute 37 colon absolute E absolute 39. In English, that says if E39 is the biggest, then make it blue and red. As this formula is copied to another cell, for example, to D delta 38. The E changes to D because it's a relative reference. The 39 changes to 38 because it's a relative reference, but the other references don't change. So when that formula is applied to D38, it says in English, if D38 is the largest, give it blue-red. And when it's copied to E37, the E doesn't change, but the 39 changes to 37. The other references don't change at all because they're absolute. And in English, it says E37, if it's the largest, give it the blue-gray. Let's make E37 the largest. Let me give it 112. And 111 loses its format because it's not the largest anymore. 112 gains the largest. You realize after Monday and Tuesday, even the calendar says WTF. What's a Friday? I put my thoughts very carefully in the assigned readings. I have an image of it here. Conditionally format a range to give green fill to the min and red fill to the max. Select the range with B37 active, and the formula you write is equals if, implied. B37 is the min of that absolute range. The footnote is truncated. Then choose format and select green fill. Because the entire range was selected, the conditional formatting applies to every cell that was selected. B37 is a relative reference, and B37 to E39 is absolute, fully absolute. The formula adjusts for other cells in the selected range, for B38, B39. Let me move this underscore up a little bit. The formula applied to C38 is, come up here, equals B changes to C, 37 changes to 38, because they're relative, equals if C38 is the min of that same range, no change, because they're absolute. Let me give you 3 minutes and then we'll work some in-class problems. Let's work a problem. Let's put S1 near the top left of your screen. Conditionally format this real big range, U6 to AF77, to have green fill, any outline border you want for the smallest monthly purchase. I prefer to be able to see the directions. I prefer to select big ranges, bottom to top. Control down arrow, control right arrow, scroll a little bit to make sure I've got the lower right corner. Control shift or command shift, left arrow, that's too far. Look, I need to fine tune it. Control shift up arrow, that's too far. Now I've got the range selected. I can see from the formula bar that AF77 is the active cell. Home, styles, conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula. You should memorize that. We'll use it every time we do conditional formatting. Green fill format. Fill, green, red, oops, green, I need to change to border, outline, then choose the color. I'll use red again. Outline, so I've got outline red, green fill. And the formula is, somebody want to try that? In English, I want each cell that is selected to be green and red. I've already got the green and red. If it's the smallest in the entire selected range, U6 to AF77. I don't want to write separate formulas for each and every cell. I could in theory, but I'm not going to. It's impractical. What is that formula? I'll give you a hint. It starts with an equal.
Is it?
Yes. I had two people speaking at once.
I think it's equals U6 as long as that's your active cell.
But it's not my active cell. What is my
AF76,
77?
77 equals the minimum, and then because it's per row, would you do you would do absolute value for the columns and then relative for the actual number.
We'll do that in a little while, but I want to conditionally format the smallest monthly purchase. The entire course, the entire range. not
Yeah,
the-
then absolute from U6 to AF77.
Yes. I selected the range initially, top, well, lower right to upper left. Does that limit the way I can select the range now? No, it doesn't. You can select it any way you want every time. So I'm gonna go, oops, I made a mouse graphical. When you use the mouse, you get absolute. So if I want a relative, I typically type it. If I want absolute, I use the mouse. Let me check it. Equals AF77 relative because, oh, I hope I didn't mess something up. My mouse jumped. I think it's okay. 0.12 is the only smallest one. So let's select the range again. This time, let's select it differently. Top left to lower right. U6 is the active cell. It was not the active cell when I entered the formula originally. Home styles, conditional formatting, manage rules. Can't read it, so I'm forced to edit it, even though I don't want to edit it. I have to. Alt print screen. Okay. Control V. Equals U6 equals the minimum, the short form of the if. Equals U6 is the minimum. Oh, this somehow got. That's what I sensed, but I didn't catch it, darn. So I need to clean that up. This is garbage at the end. $6 colon $77. The correct formula is equals U6 is the min of U6 to AF77. I can fix it. I'll give you a minute to think. Conditional formatting, manage rules, edit rule, clean up that stray garbage at the end. And I corrected the formula. I deleted plus $6 colon $77. I'm not even sure what that means. I'm surprised it didn't give me an error. Let me check something. The smallest number is 0.17. Let me enter a -1 in the upper left corner. Now -1 is the smallest and 0.12, wherever that was, is no longer the smallest. Undo. Let me stretch you, stretch your imagination. I want you to conditionally format again so that the smallest in the row is highlighted in each separate row. Let me write that. Smallest typo in each row is red. I don't particularly care about the color. The smallest in each row is red. There's a bunch of rows. I don't intend to enter separate formulas for every row. I'm going to enter a formula, one formula. Oh, let me clear the existing conditional formatting. I don't want there to be two rules in effect. Home styles, conditional formatting, clear rules from selected cells. Did I just get from that? Yes, I did. shouldn't be upset. The poor guy in the ambulance is surely in worse shape than me. So all my books are closed. Read me, the look up exact. Not all. Shell controls conditional formatting. I wanted to make sure there are no rules already in effect. I think there are none, but it doesn't hurt to clear them again. Okay, let's close the recovery pane. U6 is active. In English, I want if U6 is the smallest in row 6. By row 6, I mean U6 to AF6. I don't mean the entire row 6. All right, conditional formatting, no rule. Use a formula. Format. Fill, I'll use gold. Equals U6 because U6 is active. Equals the min. Now, I've got to be very careful here. U6 to AF77 is sort of what I want, but that's not what I want. Close parentheses. I'm going to press the F2 key so I can edit. Unfortunately, that's true only for Windows, not for Macs. If I push the arrow key, you see the cursor moves. I think you can't read that, but I think you can see the cursor moving. Is that correct? All right. When I'm in row 6, I always want to refer to columns U through AF. $U6. $U6. In other words, $U, no $6, colon, $AF, no $6. I'll print screen. And why in the heck did it change books on me? I think it's okay. I think my computer almost needs rebooting. There's a moral. Right before the exam, make sure your computer is rebooted. All right, with U6 active, I wrote equals U6, meaning if U6 is the minimum in always column U, your own row, colon, always column AF, your own row. As that formula for U6 is copied down, for example, you see the ridiculously large font, 48, as it's copied down to V7, the U changes to V, because U is a relative reference. The 6 changes to 7. The formula, it'll be gold fill, equals if, implied, V7 is the min of U, no change there because it's an absolute reference. U7, 6 changes to 7 because 6 is relative, colon AF7. The 48 will get the color if it's the smallest in row 7. Let me undo a few times. I want to undo the font. That's close enough. You can read in the back, can you? The actives, the formula, the text box. Okay, good. With U6 active, that's the formula to give it the smallest number in the row, prominent highlight. Let's give it one more. The largest number in each column. largest oh, I see, I picked gold and I wrote red. Okay, I forgot. I think we're okay. I do recommend that we remove all the existing conditional formatting. I select the range with the shift, control, or command arrows. I note the active cell is visible, U6. I don't need it yet. I'll need it when I type that formula in 60 seconds. Conditional formatting, let's clear rules from the selected cells so that it's easier to check if there's only one formatting there. Home styles, conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula. Same thing every time. Did I say what color? Green. What's the active cell? U6. It's got to say something like equals U6 equals the max. It's got to say something like of my own column, close parentheses. So far I have, this is not correct. I don't think you can read it, so I'll read it to you, and then I'll capture the image in a moment. With U6 active, I type equals U6 equals the max. Relative U always 6. Colon relative U always 77. Alt print screen. With U6 active, that's the formula I gave it. I want you to, let me crop this. Right click, crop. That didn't work. That'll do it. That's the formula I gave it. As a check, please follow along with me. Let's give it a big number in A6, 99. So now that is the largest number in the column. Let's go to V7, 98, 97, 96. '97 was not big enough. 96. We can give it big nines. So that now I'm sure 4 nines should suffice. I want you to confirm that you are getting an updated green fill for the largest number in the column by typing real large numbers. The formula with U6 active is equals U6 is the max of my own column, always row 6, colon my own column, always row 77. So as I copy that down and to the right, let me use very large font again to emphasize. V8, that's a vegetable drink, isn't it? V8. The U changes to V, the 6 changes to 8. So V8, which is not green, will get the shading. If V8 is the largest in V, U will change to V, it's relative. 6, V8 will get the shading if V8 is the largest in V6 through V77. It's tricky. I need to pay strict attention when I do this. I don't mean to brag, but it gets easier as you do it, even at my advanced age. I can do it quickly because I've done it so many times. I remember years ago being nervous going into class, afraid I would forget how to do it. But it comes to you pretty quick. Okay, conditional formatting. Let me give you 4 minutes to review that. I asked my wife where she wanted to go for our anniversary. She said somewhere she rarely goes. I said, how about the kitchen? That's why I have a bad back. Let's go to indirect is the next one. This is another difficult worksheet function. Like the offset, it's difficult. But the course is going to get easier after today. It's not going to get progressively harder and harder and harder as the offset and the indirect are difficult. You with me in book, indirect, multi-sheet, in class, version 2, recovered? That just means that's the same as the one you had. Referencing other cells. First of all, the indirect is useful when you're making a dashboard, a single master sheet, when you got to summarize information from various other sheets and put it in a single sheet. I started covering this topic in class, interestingly, because 3 summers in a row, Owen students or alums Owen alums asked me how to do this for their job. They didn't ask me how to use the indirect. They asked me, how do I make this dashboard? And in each case, I needed them to use the indirect. So now I cover it in the class, and a forthcoming homework problem requires the indirect worksheet function. Let's review referencing another cell. In A2, I have equals H1, a reference to H1. So A2 will be identical to H1 except for format issues. H1 contains a 1. The content of H1 is a 1. The format includes a $sign, a decimal point, and 2 decimal places. The format in A2 is different, but we're talking about the same thing, 1. The reference to a cell in another sheet has surprisingly difficult syntax. That's the bad news, but the good news is it's just trivial to get reminded of what that syntax is. Go to literally any empty cell, type an equal. Click on any other sheet, any cell, empty or full, press enter. And there is your syntax, equals open single quote, the name of the sheet. It's easier to read my cell comment with a large font. Equals open single quote, the name of the sheet, close single quote, exclamation point, followed by the cell reference. That is the syntax Microsoft requires. Example equals quote, JAN space sales, referring to this green shaded cell over to the right. Close single quote, exclamation point, C20. In A21, I have equals the sum, open parentheses. Open single quote. Jan space sales, close single quote, exclamation point. The range to be summed up. I mentioned in passing that if the name of the sheet has no blank space in it, a shortcut is possible, but I'm not going to consider that because the shortcut would become irrelevant if your boss later renamed the sheet to have a space in it. I illustrate it, but I'm going to forget it. I'm not going to use the shortcut. Here's a sheet name. Sheet name has a space. It's got a bunch of spaces. Sheet space, name space, etc. Here's a sheet with no spaces in its name. In the latter case, it's a little bit simpler, but I'm not going to consider that. You don't need the open quotes. You don't need the closed single quotes. You do need the exclamation points. If the sheet name has a space or will eventually later have a space, then you do need the open, close, single quotes with the exclamation outside after the quote. All righty. Indirect worksheet function. I repeat the reference to a cell. In A2, I have equals J1. J1 contains a 1, 0.0. A2 displays a 1 because of formatting difference. Indirect says in A12 equals indirect of E2. It says go to E2 for further directions. Go to E2, which says J2, which says go to J2. And that seems ridiculous. If you're not thinking deeply, if you haven't seen the applications, it seems like I'm playing games with you. It seems irrelevant, but in fact, it's highly relevant. And it's my job in the next 30 minutes to motivate you with some good examples. The indirect returns the reference specified by a text string. Let me jump right into an example. I have a number of named ranges. Airlines, aluminum abbreviated, apparels, and so forth. Craft, for example, select the cells in the heavy border range. Let me turn them yellow temporarily. Select those yellow cells, the ones that I just turned yellow, and read the name box. Those cells are named Kraft. Z Foods. Let's select these blue cells. They are named Z Foods. Check 2 or 3 of them, please. Rail, Motors. I am interested in the summation of all the cells in some of the names, the SUM of the contents of SOME. I want to sum SUM, some of the ranges, SOME. I type the ranges I'm interested in. Airlines, I want that one. Corporate bonds, abbreviated that way. Z Foods, Ironcraft, Aluminum, Rail, and Motors. The other ones are not relevant. I have all these named ranges on the same sheet for convenience in learning. But in practice, they would be scattered throughout the workbook in different sheets. So I type the name airlines. In yellow, I have equals the sum of not B22. I can't sum B22, it doesn't have any numbers in it. But the sum of indirective B22, the sum of airlines, the sum of the named range airlines is 0.383. Then I copy to the right. So in the green cell, I'm summing not C22, I'm summing corporate bonds. Let's see where airlines is, A61. Airlines is this yellow range right in here, name box. I call your attention to the entirely equivalent but ridiculous procedure. I could type in B20, A61 to B73. And in C20, P20 to AN20. And in D20, L33 to L57. So in B23, I'm summing A61 to B73. In C23, I'm summing P20 to AN20, but that's about as user unfriendly as you can get. I want the sum of all of our returns from airline investments. I want the sum of all of our returns from corporate bonds. That yellow cell copies them over. That's the idea. I'm creating a summary like this, fill without formatting, a dashboard. I'm going to ask you to take 5 minutes. Write that down. 53, 58. To review where these named ranges are and to study this example, B23, which copies to the right. I hope the quiz is up and available, not the quiz, the survey. How much did you learn, and did I go too fast or too slow? I think there was a problem with last class's survey. I hope you'll take a minute to fill that out after class. 2 questions. Was the pace about right? And did you learn anything? It is anonymous. A guy asked a lawyer, how much would you charge me to answer 3 questions? The lawyer says $1,000. Guy says, that's a lot of money, isn't it? The lawyer said, yes. Now what's your 3rd question? Let's go to sheet commissions. Shall,
Professor, we can't see your screen anymore.
can't hear the screen anymore.
We can't see your screen anymore.
Oh, you can't see it, okay. I don't know what the heck. Uh-oh. Go to sheet commission cell, well, shall try to figure this out.
You expand the Zoom window, it might give you the option to, there you go, and then share screen.
Yes, thank you. Oh, now,
Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
okay. We are given a large number of sales records, the dollar sales amount, the customer type, which is either commercial or retail, and the region, which is north, south, east, or west. There are 8 tables of commissions: retail south, retail north, retail east, retail west, and commercial north, south, east, and west. VLOOKUP, if you make a sale in the retail south, if you make a sale to a retail customer in the south, 0 to 200,000 is 5%. 200 to 500 is 8%. 500 to 1,000 is 12%. 1,000 or more is 18%. I have this correctly solved, but I think you'll agree it's error-prone and tedious if C3 and underscore and D3 equals retail south, then VLOOKUP of B3. B3, I want to find the commission on the $68,000 sale, commercial north. If it's retail south, look it up in retail south. If it's commercial north, look it up in commercial north. These are named ranges. If C3 and D3 is retail north, then look it up here. If C3 and D3 is commercial south, look it up there. I don't want to do that. That's too difficult. Can you simplify this for me? Work with your neighbor. One of you told me he keeps the cell phone conversation open when he's remote. So he's constantly able to chat with his team members, or is anybody. I think that's a good idea. I cannot tell you to walk within 6 feet of each other, but you're welcome to stand up and look at your neighbor's screen from 6 feet away. They look up of, I want the commission on a $68,000 sale in commercial north. In 60 seconds, I'll start asking for a volunteer. I want to look up B3. So in E3, I write equals VLOOKUP of B3. Where? In English, in the named range commercial north, which is over here. Let me make an intentional error. That's kind of close to what I want, but as you can see, it's not correct. It returns a value error. VLOOKUP of B3, the $68,097. In the range C3 and D3, that's commercial north. What do I need to do to correct that? Yes?
Put an indirect formula before the C3.
Yes, indeed.
And then between C3 and D3, we'll put and location underscore corporation.
Yes. And the answer is 25%. You can compare it with the existing answer in column P, which is correct but error prone. VLOOKUP of B3, where? Not in C3 and D3. There's no such range as C3 underscore D3. There's no such range. But indirective C3 and underscore and D3 means commercial underscore north, which is a named range. That is the formula. Copy it down. Let's go next to sheet 4, in-class totals so far. Let's look at the sheets to the left. June sales. Division A, product, solid plates, various products, sales. Division B, C, D, and E. All of these are in the same column in the various sheets. June sales, I have sheets, January sales, abbreviated Jan sales, Feb sales, March, April, May, they're not in order, but that doesn't matter. June sales, March sales. There's different numbers of records. Here we have the last entry in row 22 in April sales. In February, it goes down through row 34. I would like to give a formula to sum up all the January sales. The data sheets, Jan sales, Feb sales, June sales have sales of various products in different divisions. We want to find the total sales for each of the months shown in B18 to B23, January, February, March through June. We do not have data for July yet in. Can't see the image. All right, the first step. In C18, complete the formula to display the reference to B:0 in sheet Jan sales. Why? Let's look at Jan sales. B:0. Text will, I'm going to add them all up. It's going to ignore text like Division A, product, sales, empty cells will be ignored. These labels, salad plates, dinner plates will be ignored. It's going to add up all the numbers in B:0 in sheet Jan sales. So in C18, complete the formula to display the reference to B:0 in sheet Jan sales. I want the display of B18 to be open single quote, Jan space sales, close single quote, exclamation, B:0. That's the required syntax when referencing a range in another sheet. Anybody want to take a stab at what might come next in this formula? After the A18 comes what? A18 is January. When I copy down, A19 is February. The name of the sheet is JAN, the first 3 letters of the month. So let me type comma 3, close parentheses, and that's not complete. But there's no syntax error, so it's looking good so far. Jan. But I want it actually open quote Jan, open single quote Jan. Extend it to the rest of the required syntax. How do you make the display in B18 look like the image? Quote, Jan space sales, quote, etc. you work part of it? Can you make the display in B18 Jan space sales,
And quote, space sales, quote,
ampersand? What comes next?
quotation,
Okay, then, what-
space, sales,
yes,
and quote.
that's close. That's closer than I had it. I'm missing now the closed single quote, the exclamation point, and the B:0. That's the required syntax, all right? Now that we have a reference, C18 equals the sum of this reference, wrong. Displays nothing. That's not correct. The answer is over $300,000. What did I do wrong? The sum of indirect of B18. $340,000. That seems tedious, but dashboards are universally recognized as real important. To be able to summarize in a single place for senior management various numbers from various places in the book. In particular, the January is in sheet Jan sales, and the numbers add up to that. C18, you can memorize that, the sum of indirect of B18. The real work was B18, setting up the syntax, quote, quote, quote. Let me refer you to the leftmost sheet. I thought I had it there. Oh, I have hard coding. Okay, quote, 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 meaning open double quotes, single quotes, close double quotes. That's what I'm writing. I'm using spaces so you can clearly see I have open double quotes, single quote, close double quotes, but I'm not allowed to put spaces there. Syntax will be wrong. It needs to be open double quotes. That's what it needs to be. Now that's almost impossible to read if you don't know what it's supposed to say. A single quote is a character required, and Excel requires double quotes around any non-numeric content. Quote, quote, quote is what that says. Interpreted as open double quote, single quote, close double quote, ampersand the left three characters of the label in A18, Jan, and the words sales with a leading space because the name of the sheet has a space between Jan and sales, B:0. This is the real reason I taught left, right, ampersand, and so forth. Summary, sheet 2, indirect worksheet functions. Look at B23. Summary, the major points. B23 has the sum of indirect of B22. Understand that example. You want to see the sum of airlines and corp bonds and seafoods and on, you put the names of the ranges here. They're named ranges, so it's intuitive. And beneath it, you say the sum of indirect of the name. That says the sum of airlines. That says the sum of corporate bonds, the named range. Summary, sheet 2 indirect, the commission shall equals VLOOKUP of this in indirect of commercial underscore north, something like that. And in class total so far. I'll give you a few minutes for that. It's perhaps today is the most difficult class in the course. Then we'll tone it down a notch. Our next topic is not directly testable. So you can go to sleep, you can even leave. Of course, you can leave anytime you want. It's important enough to cover. It's a capability that does not yet exist for Macs. It does exist for Windows, but I think it's coming for Macs. So give me part of your attention. Mr. Zuckerberg, do I have your complete attention? You know what I'm talking about? A movie line. All right. Every keyboard character has an associated numerical code. For example, the slash is 47. Who cares? The 9 is 57. That's utterly unimportant, but it is interesting to note, important to note, that every numerical character, every numerical digit, 0, 1 through 9, comes before text. The capital letters come next and the lower letters come after that. Any number is considered smaller than any letter for sorting or comparison purposes. Remember that, numbers before text. In the next example, the next sheet, I want to illustrate the capability of the evaluate formula button, which exists not on Macs, but on Windows. I want to ask the question, I want to pretend like I don't understand what Excel is doing. I want to know if you can buy something on day 1, knowing that it takes 5 days to ship to the factory for remanufacturing. Will it arrive by day 1? I am asking the question, is 1 plus 5 less than or equal to 1? Of course, the answer is no. If you want to take notes, these are the two. Any number is considered smaller than any text, any letter for comparison or sorting purposes. Is 1 plus 5 less than or equal to 1? Of course not. 1 plus 5 is 6. Yet, look at this red shaded cell. G11 contains equals if C10 plus C11, that's 1 plus 5, that's 6, is less than or equal to C12. If true, give me an okay. If false, give me a no. And it displays okay. let me pretend I don't understand why. Here's the tool you would use. The Evaluate Formula button. Formulas tab. It's the microscope with the little f sub x in the circle. The f sub x is the symbol of mathematical notation for the formula bar. A microscope to look into the details of the formula. Now I have images of everything I'm going to do. When I go to the Evaluate Formula button, you'll see this. C10 will be underlined. And then you click OK, and C10 will be replaced by its value. You'll see that in a minute, but you don't have to scramble to memorize. I have a image of everything I'm going to do. Why in the heck does this say OK? Obviously, it's true. The logical test is true. Let me change it. OKK, AAA, 222, and it displays that. I put gibberish in there. It really is displaying the first, it's displaying OK because it considers C10 plus C11 to be less than or equal to C12. Why in the heck? Formula bar, Evaluate Formula button, equals if, I don't think you can read that, equals if C10 underline plus C11, evaluate, equals if quote, one quote. I'll pretend to be surprised. Where did the quotes come from? Evaluate, quote one quote plus 5, evaluate 6. That's what I mean. I'm asking if 1 plus 5 is less than or equal to 1. I'm asking if 6 is less than or equal to 1, and I feel lucky I dodged a bullet. How did it come up with a 6 and a quote one quote? It converted the text to numeric because only numbers can be added. You cannot add cat and dog and chair and table. You can only add numerals. Let me close and start again. Equals if C10, which is quote one quote, okay, I'll pretend to be surprised. It really is. It was obtained from the mid worksheet function, which takes the numeral and considers it a text character. But the plus number, it's going to convert the quote one quote to the numeral 1 and ask if 6. That's exactly what I mean. If 6 is less than or equal to quote one quote. Remember my first conclusion, numbers are less than text for sorting and comparison purposes. It does not need to convert. That's true. This number is less than or equal to that text, equals if true. Okay, the whole point is you can use the Evaluate Formula button to understand why Microsoft Excel is doing something that you don't think it should be doing. That's the whole point. All right, close. You get an inkling of the problem if you selected the 1, the 5, and the 1 and chose a currency format. It ignored me for the 1. Why? Because that's text. It ignored me for the other 1 because that's text. And it gave me the desired format only for the numeral. Blue cell contains a number. 5. The yellow cell mid of B10, 10, 1. Okay, so the Evaluate formula is kind of nice to know. I cannot make it testable because Macs don't have it and Macs are welcome. Notice if you added 0, you would get equals if quote 1 quote plus 5, that's 6, is less than or equal to quote 1 quote plus 0. It would convert the text number to a number and give you the right answer. So if you take away nothing else from this last 10 minutes, remember your colleague is not crazy if he adds 0 to a result. That's a short way of converting it to a numerical value if necessary. This one works okay. The answer is no. The answer is not okay. The next one is C10 plus C11 minus C12 less than or equal to 0. You get the right answer. This formula works. Now, let me give you one final takeaway. When you write a formula in a cell, you have an incredible level of help. First of all, you get the argument tooltip. If that's not sufficient, you go to the function wizard. And you get context-dependent help. If that's not sufficient, you go to the evaluate formula button. That's a huge amount of help. However, when you go to conditional formatting, you have no help whatsoever. You either type it correctly or it beeps at you. For that reason, before you start to enter a complicated conditional formatting formula, I recommend you draft it out in a cell and get it right. It's entirely plausible that you would not notice that you needed to add 0 to this. Let's look at the conditional formatting. The shipping time is 2 right now, 2 days. Warehouse A, day A. Can you get it to where? Can you get it from warehouse A? Warehouse A, day 1. Can you get it to warehouse? No. Can you get it to factory? The factory on day 1. Is 1 plus 2 less than or equal to 1? No. So this is false. This formula is eventually going to go in the conditional formatting. I'm pretending that initially I didn't realize you needed a plus 0. So the formula is wrong. You need a plus 0, but it helps to be able to see that in a cell to understand what you're doing. You'll notice these are changing cells. Any formula I entered is going to be removed by solver. It's going to be overwritten. But that's okay temporarily, just to put the formula in there temporarily. I think you'll agree that you might not realize you need the plus 0 for the formula to work. You play around using the argument tooltip, the function wizard, the evaluate formula button, until you finally get the formula right. Then copy it to the clipboard, Control C, escape. Select for conditional formatting. Home, conditional formatting, styles, manage rule, edit rule. I did not enter that formula directly in there. I pasted it in after struggling to get it right. I'm pretending, the first time I learned this, I really did not know you needed the plus 0 in there. So I had to go to evaluate formula and learn it. Consider using a draft of the formula in a cell because you get 3 levels of help. At least Windows users do. Even the first 2 levels of help that Mac users get is great as well. The argument tooltip, the function wizard, and for Windows users, the evaluate formula button. Then paste it in. Okay, and now the conditional formatting is correct. Then clear away the formulas. In this case, they're not going to be used. The green means it's an allowable change in cell. 1 plus 2 is 3. So you can get it to the factory for day 3, or day 4, or day 5, or 6, or 7. Warehouse A, day 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. You can't get it there for day 1. You can't get it there for day 2. You can't get it there for day 3. You can get it there for day 4. The actual application is not as important as the concept. Consider using the function wizard and the evaluate formula button. I wrote my thoughts, only the green are okay. And I wrote formulas in cells, emphasize in cells, and the argument tooltip, the function wizard, and the evaluate formula button. Conditional formatting has no help. So maybe you'll want to consider putting it in a cell temporarily and then taking it to conditional formatting. But conditional formatting has to be self-contained. Okie dokie, I will see you. If you have a minute, take the quiz. It's open until 11 p.m. tonight.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. We had a slight break there, I think. Right. Some. Dave's run it. Let's just sit there. Oh, I haven't eaten since 9:30. I felt like this. I think people. So someone probably. 8, really? Just take it down, probably like. Especially being a kid too. I was also doing it yesterday. Yeah. Oh, careful there.
Hello, Wayne.
How are you?
Chill. I'm gonna go put my coat on.
Aw,
I feel fine, I just got cold.
yeah. I feel like that happens a lot when the weather's so unpredictable.
Tomorrow I get vaccinated, I think I told you that.
You would?
I'll get vaccinated tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that.
And it's a sad, maybe I said this too, it's a sad commentary that you know exactly what vaccination I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yep.
You know the nursery rhyme, ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posy? That has a horrible background, you know it?
Has a what?
A horrible background, it's
Oh,
referring
yeah.
to
It's not,
dead people from the Black Plague.
yeah.
I never would have guessed.